In ancient Egypt, they took your brain out through your nose, a bronze hook up the nostril, and then they stirred. What came out went in the bin. Not a jar, not a shrine, the bin. Your liver got a jar. Your lungs, your stomach, and your gut got jars too, with lids shaped like gods. Your brain got nothing, because they were certain the thinking happened somewhere else, in your heart. So the heart stayed exactly where it was, and for about 3,000 years, that was simply the answer. Not a guess, not a debate, the answer. Here is the part nobody tells you. The nose was not the shortcut. It was the only door. Cutting the skull open would have wrecked the face, and the face was the part that had to last forever. So they went in underneath it, through the left nostril usually, through the thin bone behind it, a long bronze rod hooked at the end. And then this is the bit. They did not pull the brain out whole. They could not. It does not come out whole. They broke it up inside the skull, stirred it until it was liquid enough to drain, then turned the body face down and let it run out. Some embalmers rinsed the empty skull with resin. Some packed it with linen. Some just left it hollow. We know this because we have looked, not by unwrapping anybody, by putting mummies through CT scanners, and the scans say something the textbooks used to miss. They did not always do it. Some mummies still have their brains. Some were opened through the base of the skull instead. It was a trade with house styles, and it changed over centuries. But when they did take it out, it never once got a jar. 4 organs were worth keeping. Each one got its own stone jar. Each jar got its own god, carved into the lid. The liver went to Imsety, the one with a human face. The lungs went to Hapi, the baboon. The stomach went to Duamutef, the jackal. The intestines went to Qebehsenuef, the falcon. 4 gods, 4 jars, 4 organs, sealed, blessed, and set beside the coffin so you could collect them later. There is no 5th jar. There was never a 5th jar. The organ you are using to understand this sentence was not on the list. The heart stayed because the heart was you. Not pump, not plumbing. An Egyptian thought the heart held your mind, your memory, your character, and your will. It was the part that knew what you had done, which is why it had to be there at the end. Because at the end, there was a courtroom, the hall of 2 truths, a set of scales in the middle of the floor. On one side, a feather, not a heavy feather. The feather of mad truth, order, the way things are supposed to be. On the other side, your heart. Anubis works the scales. Thoth writes down the result. And beside the scales sits a creature with a crocodile's head. Ammit, she is waiting. If your heart is heavier than the feather, she eats it. And that is the end of you. Not an afterlife of punishment, an ending. So the heart had to come to court. And here is the detail that gives the whole thing away. Egyptians were buried with a stone scarab laid over the heart. Carved into it was a spell. And the spell is not a prayer for mercy. It is addressed to the heart itself. It asks the heart not to speak against its owner. Do not stand up as a witness. Do not oppose me in the court. They were not afraid of the judge. They were afraid of the organ that knew everything. Now, it would be easy to file this under ancient people being ancient. Do not, because there is a document that ruins that story completely. It is called the Edwin Smith Papyrus. It is a surgical text, copied around 1600 BC from something older still, and it contains the first written appearance of the word brain, anywhere in any language that we have found. So they had a word for it. It goes further. The papyrus lists 48 injuries in order, from the head downward. Each one gets an examination, a diagnosis, and a verdict. And in the head cases, it records something remarkable, that a wound to the skull can take away a man's speech, that it can stop one side of his body from working. They wrote down that damage up here changes what happens down there. They observed the brain doing its job. They wrote it on papyrus, and then they kept pulling it out through the nose and throwing it away. That is not ignorance. That is a fact that did not fit the belief and lost. It took the Greeks, and it took them a long time, and they argued the whole way. Alcmaeon of Croton, 5th century BC, he said sensation arrives in the brain. Eyes, ears, nose, all the lines run there. A Hippocratic writer went further and put it flatly. Men ought to know that from the brain, and from the brain only, come joys, laughter, and grief. That is written down roughly 2,400 years ago. Then Alexandria, Herophilus and Erasistratus, 3rd century BC, doing something almost nobody was allowed to do, dissecting human bodies. They traced nerves, they followed them, they found where they went. They went to the brain. So that settles it. Except it did not settle anything, because Aristotle had already said the opposite, and Aristotle was Aristotle. He held that thinking happened in the heart, and that the brain was there to cool the blood. A radiator. The most influential thinker in the ancient world looked at the organ doing the thinking and called it a cooling system. That view did not die quietly. It lasted centuries. Galen, 2nd century AD, went at it with a knife. He cut nerves in living animals and showed exactly what stopped working when he did. Voice, movement, breath. It was, in the end, a very slow argument won by evidence. Here is where it gets uncomfortable. The belief lost, the language did not. When you memorize something, what do you say? You learn it by heart, not by brain, by heart. When something moves you, it is heartfelt. When someone leaves, your heart breaks. When you mean it, you say it from the heart. Every one of those is a sentence. An Egyptian embalmer would have agreed with completely. 3,000 years of being wrong, still sitting in your mouth. The organ that does all of it has never once been given the credit. It did not get a jar. It did not get a god. It does not even get the sentence. It just quietly does the work and lets the heart take the applause. And it is doing it right now.